Hello everybody, thanks for joining me today on a tour of a very unique floating home over here in Conyer, a little village near the Thanet coast in Kent, midway between Faversham and Sittingbourne. Now there's a few good reasons I think you should buy this place, that we're putting it up for sale for $850,000 via Unique Property Company. One, it's just a very cool, very practical and very sustainable home. Two, it includes a very rare freehold mooring. And three, I think there's development and investment opportunities here, which I'll detail as we're walking around the gardens. Now, I had to split this video into two visits because the house sits on a tidal creek just off the swell. I've been once to film at low tide, but I thought it would be nice for you to see it at high tide as well, so I've returned today. And for the record, there is a 12-hour period between the tide changes from low to high. Now I'm going to talk about the house first. The whole thing is built on a floating concrete base. The owner had this built by a French company called Modular. I'll leave a link to in the description below to their company. You can research them if you're interested. They developed this idea as a way of allowing people to live in floodplains in parts of France. It's basically a series of plastic cells wrapped in thick concrete and then all bolted together. It's a bit like a big Lego brick block really. And once they were assembled, the owner then had the extra layer of an extra layer of concrete screed added to the top, creating a very solid and very stable base. What this also means is that it's very durable and can last up to 400 years. The house itself is a modular build. What this means is you can change the layout or add or remove walls or add space if you like. The arrangement at the moment is a very usable 1,500 square feet made up of a large open plan reception space with fantastic ceiling height, big windows and a built-in wood burner. We've got a big open plan kitchen that sits in one corner of the room next to the dining area, with the rest of the room just being a mix of living and office space. And I really like this room. It feels like a very sociable place to hang out with friends or families or host parties. The other half of the house beyond the hall at the back is made up of two double bedrooms, a family bathroom with separate shower, and that's got a gorgeous roll top bath, and it's also got a very handy utility room that's big enough to accommodate a chest freezer, a washing machine and tumble dryer as well, and it's also got some very handy cupboard storage. And on more practical notes, the whole thing is connected to solar panels on the roof, the water is mains connected, and the wastewater is dealt with by its own processing plant, which we'll go into more detail shortly. All in all, the house costs around £5,000 a year to run, which I don't think is too shabby. Now outside, and this is where things get really interesting and requires me to flip the camera around and guide you through the garden, so let's do that now and go and get into the detail. Okay, welcome to the Persevere. Now this is the road outside, which sits just on or by the marina where the floating home is located, but it's a very quiet street, not a lot going on, nice quiet village as you'd expect, and entrance gate into the front garden. Now a bit of history for you. The Persevere. The name comes from an old wooden boat that was located here for many years, and when the owner first moved in around 12 years ago, they started digging around, clearing the garden, and found this, which was the name plaque that was sat on the boat when they first took over, so they decided to make a nice feature of that. And to my right we've got one very small section of a very large garden. There's lots of little areas to sit and hide away. It's very secluded, very quiet. So one here, and this is right by the tidal creek, which is nearly at high tide. Nice decked area there to sit down, and that decked area over there is the cover effectively for the processing plant, which deals with the wastewater. Now the wastewater comes out of the Persevere, it's processed, cleaned, and then the clean water that's left over is just deposited into the creek. But that window and door there is the front door for the building, and that expanse along the front there is the whole thing. So it's around 1,500 square feet, and it's a modular home, as I said. Now along here, just up this, what looks like a railway track, is because it was part of the railway track that connected this when it was a working dock up until the 1960s, and it connects, or used to connect, to Tenham station, where all the goods would come off and head up to the station, then into various parts further afield in Kent and beyond. So I think there is a huge potential for investment and development here. Now, bearing in mind this is a modular house now, there is no requirement for planning permission on on this because it's a floating home. Now what that means, I think, as far as my conversation goes with the owner, is if you were minded to, you could change the layout of this. You could add another floor on top, even add more, not accommodation, but you could go for a roof terrace on top of that and split this into 3, maybe even 4 vertical houses. So you've got effectively a row of floating terraced homes, which could be could be a really good holiday let investment, or you could sell them off individually, but I think they would be really straightforward and just a nice thing to do. Big garden. That pond there is the site of an old tree that was hit by lightning and split in half, and that triangular piece of wood is the rudder from the Persevere when it was docked here. Just behind me, this decked area is another area you can see down into the creek, and if I'm not mistaken, that is the base that I mentioned. It's a concrete floating base. You can just make out that. I have got other footage which I'll show, which I've put in the video, which shows it when it was actually at low tide, but that's the very interesting system this French company have developed. This is a big garden, very sustainable. The owners have made huge progress in using it for growing all sorts of fruit and veg. There's tomatoes in that home. Actually, that's stuffed with tomatoes, that home built dome, potatoes, and that's one of the reasons, if not the main reason, why they're moving. They've really enjoyed living sustainably, so they're actually selling this to go for something which has got much more land. They're looking for a small holding now, so they can carry on with their passion for homegrown and sustainability. As I move around here, there's a pear tree over there. They had 6 kilos of pears off of that last year. Now this area here is quite size, and I think could be the site for the other aspect of the development that I mentioned in the intro. Just beyond that fence there is a row of, I think, 6 or 7, I think very attractive. They're new builds. They are done in the style of fishermen's huts, weatherboarded front. They look really nice, very stylish, and I think with the right planning application and the right architect, you could do something on a smaller scale, maybe 2 or 3 houses, but you could certainly squeeze, I think, minimum of 2 houses into this garden. So you'd end up creating a site that had housing on it, and potentially you could split this into a couple of properties, the main building here, the floating home, and you could turn that into something that could be really easily used, and I think a very successful holiday let business. Garden shed, always a good addition to any big back garden. Now the owners are very creative people, and this workshop here is a home office. Lots of writing and thinking goes on in here. Desk space, there's electricity out here, and then another workshop on my right. And as will become very obvious, the owners are very keen potters and ceramicists, and this is a fully fledged working pottery studio. There's a kiln in the corner there. There's electric out here. There's 3-phase electric out here. That's a big kiln. Now, whilst this is earmarked all to go when they have sold, they have also mentioned that if somebody were interested in using this as a pottery studio, they would consider negotiating to leave all this behind. And then last but not least, we've got a garden shed, bins, bikes, and somewhere to store that all important wood that feeds that big wood burner in the front room. And lastly, if you are the sort of person that is not really that bothered about doing anything other than just moving in, buying it, enjoying it, and living in it for exactly what it is, you might be interested to know that the wildlife and just the general nature of everything down here is exceptional. There are loads of birds that the owner has really enjoyed understanding and seeing. He's had woodpeckers, jackdaws, swallows, egrets, swans, amongst many of the other bird life that visits the garden. He's found slow worms and newts, and even a few years ago there was a seal that popped its head up in the tidal creek just by the boat next door, which was interesting for them. So yes, if that's the kind of thing you're into, I don't think you'll be disappointed with the Persevere. Okay, I'm all done and heading back to London now. Thank you very much for joining me today over here in Conyer to tour this very unique floating home. What did you think? As always, all comments gratefully received. If you could leave them below, that would be much appreciated. And if you are interested in the finer detail, please leave any questions below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Or you can email me directly, simon.stone@uniquepropertycompany.co.uk. And don't forget, if you are a fan of alternative homes, why not consider checking some of the other properties on my channel, or consider subscribing to see more exclusive content as I go about my business on a weekly basis. Thanks again. Stay safe, everyone. I'll see you on the next tour.